I stood frozen in the middle of my stepdad's 50th birthday bash, staring at a name tag that might as well have been a dagger. Emma, the failure. That's what it said, in crisp black letters on a glossy white card. My breath caught in my throat, and the chatter of the party faded into a dull roar. Who does that? Who turns a celebration into a public slap in the face? I blinked hard, hoping I'd misread it, but the words stared back, cold and unyielding. The party was in full swing at a swanky lakeside cabin in Vermont. Think polished wood floors, fairy lights strung across the deck, and a playlist of classic rock humming through the air. My stepdad, Greg, had rented the place to show off to his golf buddies and business pals. I'd driven 3 hours from my tiny apartment in Albany just to be here, clutching a gift I'd spent weeks picking out, a vintage watch I knew he'd love. Or at least I thought he would. I glanced around, my stomach twisting. The deck was packed with people sipping craft beers and nibbling on fancy appetizers. Laughter erupted from a cluster near the fire pit, and I recognized the sharp, mocking tone instantly. It was Trish, Greg's wife, my stepmom. She leaned against the railing, her auburn hair glinting under the lights, smirking like she'd just won a bet. Our eyes locked, and her grin widened. She raised her glass in a mock toast. That's when I knew. This wasn't an accident. My fingers tightened around the name tag, the edges biting into my palm. I could have ripped it up right then, stormed over and demanded answers. But Trish lived for drama. If I blew up, I'd just prove her point. Emma, the hot-tempered screw-up. Instead, I forced a deep breath and set it back on the table, smoothing it out like it was no big deal. Inside, though, something snapped. This wasn't just a petty. Yeah, this was war. I weaved through the crowd, dodging fake smiles and half-hearted hellos. Nobody really noticed me, same as always. Greg stood by the grill, flipping burgers surrounded by his perfect little kingdom. His bio kids, Mason and Lila, flanked him like loyal knights. Mason, 27, bragged about his new tech gig in Boston, while Lila, 24, flashed her engagement ring, gushing about her fiancé. They were the golden duo Greg always wanted. Me, I was the stray he'd picked up when he married my mom 15 years ago. I grabbed a soda from the cooler, the cold can grounding me as I replayed the scene in my head. The failure. It wasn't just Trish's handwriting. I could feel Greg's indifference behind it. He'd never said it out loud, but I'd seen it in his eyes for years. I took a sip, the fizz burning my throat, and asked myself, why am I even here? The answer hit me like a brick. I wasn't wanted. Not really. Memories flickered. Greg teaching me to fish by the creek when I was 12. His laugh warm and real. Back then, I thought he'd be my dad forever. Then Trish came along, and that version of him vanished. I'd spent years chasing that old Greg, hoping he'd see me again. But standing there, watching him clink glasses with his real kids, I realized something chilling, that Greg was gone and maybe he'd never existed. Trish sauntered over, her heels clicking on the deck. Emma, didn't think you'd show, she said, voice dripping with fake sweetness. She scanned me, jeans, a flannel shirt, no makeup, like I was a stain on her perfect night. Still doing that. What's it called? Blogging. She smirked, knowing damn well I ran a freelance graphic design business. I opened my mouth to snap back, but she cut me off, patting my arm. Cute little hobby. Rage bubbled up, but I swallowed it. Yeah, keeps me busy, I said, flashing a tight smile. She chuckled, then leaned in close. Oh, and nice name. Tag, huh? Thought it'd give you a laugh. Her eyes gleamed with malice. I stared at her, calm as ice, and nodded. Hilarious. I turned away, my mind racing. This wasn't just a party. It was a stage, and I was the punchline. But as I gripped my soda, watching Trish strut off, I made a choice. If they wanted to play, I'd play. Only this time I wouldn't lose. What they didn't know? I'd been planning something for months, and tonight, it was go time. I leaned against the deck railing, the cool night air brushing my face as I watched the party unfold like a bad sitcom. The name tag sat back on the table, but its weight pressed on me heavier than ever. Emma, the failure. Trish's little stunt wasn't just a dig. It was a spotlight on everything I'd tried to bury. Years of being the odd one out, the kid who didn't fit Greg's shiny new family. I took another sip of soda, the bubbles sharp against my tongue, and let the anger simmer. Greg flipped another burger, laughing at something Mason said. He didn't even glance my way. I wasn't surprised, ignoring me was his specialty. I remembered being 13, waiting outside school in the rain for him to pick me up. He never showed. Later I found him in the garage, tinkering on Mason's dirt bike. Got caught up, he'd mumbled, not even looking at me. I'd nodded like, it was fine, but it wasn't. It never was. Trish's voice cut through the hum of the party again, loud and deliberate. Oh, Lila's wedding next month? Greg's covering the whole thing. Venue, dress, everything. That's just how he is with his kids. She shot me a sidelong glance, her lips curling. Mason chimed in. Yeah, Dad's the best. Always has our backs. I clenched my jaw. His kids. Not me. Never me. I set my soda down, the aluminum clinking, against the railing. The party buzzed around me, people toasting, plates clattering, the lake lapping softly in the distance. It should have been peaceful, but all I felt was a storm brewing inside. I'd come here with a plan, something I'd cooked up after years of their crap. But now, staring at that name tag, I wondered if it was enough. Growing up, I'd tried to blend in. When Trish moved in, I was 10, wide-eyed and hopeful. She'd hugged me, all sugary smiles, promising we'd be one big, happy family. That lasted about a week. Soon it was Emma, watch Lila, or Emma, clean up Mason's mess. I was the built-in babysitter, the scapegoat, the kid who got the hand-me-downs while Mason and Lila got new bikes and private lessons. Greg didn't stop it. He just faded into Trish's shadow. I scanned the crowd, spotting Lila twirling her ring under the lights. She caught my eye and smirked, like she knew something I didn't. Maybe she did. Maybe they all did. The name tag wasn't a solo act. Trish loved an audience, and Greg's silence was his applause. My chest tightened. I'd spent years proving I didn't need them, building my design business from scratch. Yet here I was, still the punchline. A memory hit me hard. My 16th birthday. Mom had died 2 years before, leaving me a small savings account for college. I'd guarded it like treasure, dreaming of art school. Then one day it was gone. I confronted Greg, voice shaking. Where's my money? He shrugged, casual as ever. Mason needed it for his coding boot camp. You'll figure something out. Trish had smirked behind him, not even hiding it. That was the day I stopped calling him Dad. I shook off the thought and straightened up. The party wasn't about Greg's birthday. It was about their power trip. I'd seen it before, at Lila's graduation party 2 years ago. I'd shown up fresh off a big client win, hoping Greg might notice. Instead, he'd smirked. Still doodling for a living. I'd left early, swearing I'd never come back. Yet here I was, lured by some dumb hope he'd changed. Trish's laugh rang out again, pulling me back. She was by the fire pit now, regaling guests with some story about Mason's promotion. I caught her eye and she winked. My blood boiled. But I kept my face blank. She wanted me to crack. Always had. Back when I was 14, she'd joked at Thanksgiving that I'd never amount to much. Greg had chuckled. I'd cried in my room later, but not anymore. I was 25 now, and tears weren't my style. I slipped my phone from my pocket, checking the time. 9:47 p.m. The night was young, and so was my plan. I'd been working on something big, a project that had flipped their world upside down. They thought I was still the quiet kid they could kick around. They were wrong. I tucked my phone away, a smirk tugging at my lips. This party was about to get interesting. The fire pit crackled, casting flickering shadows across the deck as I stood there, soda in hand, plotting my next move. The name tag still haunted me. Emma, the failure. But it wasn't just about tonight. It was every slight, every sidelong glance. Every time Greg and Trish made me feel like I didn't belong. I took a slow breath, the smoky air filling my lungs, and let the past flood in. If they wanted to label me, they'd get the full story. I was 9 when Mom died, leaving me with Greg, her high school sweetheart turned husband. He wasn't my bio dad, but he'd stepped up, or so I thought. We'd spent weekends hiking in the Adirondacks, him pointing out constellations, me giggling as he burned our campfire marshmallows. I'd called him Dad without hesitation. Then Trish crashed into our lives when I was 10, all fake smiles and designer perfume dragging Mason and Lila along like trophies. At first I tried to fit in. I'd braid Lila's hair, play video games with Mason, even laugh at Trish's dumb jokes. But it didn't take long to see the shift. Greg stopped our hikes, started coaching Mason's soccer team instead. Trish turned me into the family maid. Emma, grab the laundry, or Emma, don't bother Greg, he's busy with Lila's recital. By 12 I was invisible, a ghost in my own home. I wandered toward the cabin's edge, the lake's dark water glinting under the moon. The party noise faded as I remembered the worst of it. Mom's savings, $15,000 she'd scraped together for me, was my ticket out. I'd checked the account obsessively, dreaming of Parsons School of Design. Then at 17, it vanished. Greg's excuse? Lila's dance academy needed funding. You're smart, Emma, you'll manage. Trish had nodded, smug as ever. I'd worked 2 jobs, waitressing and dog walking, to pay for community college instead. Back then, I'd begged for scraps of approval. I'd show Greg my sketches, hoping he'd smile like he used to. He'd just grunt, nice, and turn away. Trish would chime in, maybe you'll get a real job someday. Meanwhile, Mason got a car for his 16th, and Lila's every whim was a priority. I was the outsider, the step-kid they tolerated. Barely. I kicked a pebble off the deck, watching it plunk into the water. Tonight wasn't random, it was their playbook. Like that Christmas 3 years ago when I'd shown up with a client portfolio, proud I'd landed a gig with a local startup. Greg had smirked, still playing with crayons? Trish laughed and Mason added, bet it doesn't pay much. I'd left before dessert, vowing to cut them off. But guilt trips from aunts and uncles? He's still your dad, Emma, kept dragging me back. Now, at 25, I'd built something real. My design business wasn't just doodling, it was thriving, pulling in clients from New York to Seattle. I'd bought my own car, rented a cozy loft, and hadn't asked Greg for a dime since I left at 18. Yet here I was, staring at that damn name tag, feeling 12 again. Trish knew how to twist the knife, and Greg let her. I turned back to the party, spotting Greg by the grill, his gray hair catching the light. He looked older, but his indifference hadn't aged a day. Mason stood beside him, gesturing wildly about some app he'd launched. Lila flitted around, showing off her ring to a gaggle of cousins. They were a unit, tight, polished, untouchable. I was the loose thread they kept snipping. A laugh escaped me, bitter and quiet. I'd spent years proving I didn't need them, but tonight they'd pushed too far. That name tag wasn't just a jab, it was a declaration. Fine, if they wanted to call me a failure, I'd show them what failure really looked like. My plan wasn't just revenge, it was a reckoning. Trish's voice floated over again, loud and performative. Greg's so proud of Mason's new condo, bought it himself, but Greg helped with the down payment. She glanced my way, daring me to react. I didn't. I just sipped my soda, letting the cold fizz steady me. She had no idea what was coming. Neither did Greg. I'd been quiet too long, but silence was my weapon now. The clock was ticking, and I was ready to strike. The party hummed along, oblivious to the storm brewing in my chest. I stood by the lake, the name tag sting still fresh. Emma, the failure. The fairy lights twinkled, the grill sizzled, and Greg's laugh boomed across the deck. I'd come here with a plan, but now it felt bigger than that. This wasn't just about tonight. It was about every year they'd shoved me aside. I tossed my empty soda can in the trash and made up my mind. It was time to flip the script. I'd been working on something for months, a side project I hadn't told anyone about. Not Greg, not Trish, not even my best friend Casey. It started as a way to blow off steam. A blog called Family Ties and Tangled Lies. I'd poured every raw memory into it. Greg's broken promises, Trish's snide remarks, the stolen college fund. But it wasn't just a diary. I'd turned it into a storytelling platform, mixing my designs with audio snippets, anonymous but real. It had taken off, 50,000 followers in 6 months, brands begging for collabs. Tonight I'd planned to drop a new post, one that'd hit close to home. Now I'd make it personal. I slipped my phone out, thumbing through the draft I'd prepped. The title? The Step Kid They Forgot. It was loaded. Every detail coded to dodge a lawsuit, but they'd know it was them. I'd recorded a voice memo last week, my voice steady as I described a hypothetical stepdad who'd let his new wife erase his old life. I'd paired it with a sketch of a man at a grill, gray hair and all. Subtle, but not too subtle. I glanced up, catching Trish watching me from the fire pit. She raised an eyebrow like she sensed something brewing. Good. Let her wonder. I hit schedule. The post would go live at midnight, right when this party peaked. My followers would eat it up and the comments would explode. I could already hear the buzz. Who's this jerk? Spill the tea. I smirked, tucking my phone away. Step 1, done. Greg called out, food's ready, and the crowd swarmed the grill. I hung back, watching him pile burgers on plates. For Mason and Lila first. Typical. I grabbed a hot dog instead, the bun soft in my hands, and took a bite. It tasted like cardboard, but I didn't care. I was too wired, adrenaline pumping as I mapped out my next move. The blog was just the start. I had something bigger up my sleeve. Trish strutted over, a plate of salmon in hand. Not eating much, Emma? Watching your figure? Her tone was syrupy, but her eyes were knives. I chewed slowly, meeting her. Druise? Just pacing myself, I said, casual as hell. She tilted her head, sizing me up. You're quiet tonight. Something on your mind? I smiled, all teeth. Just enjoying the party. She frowned, clearly expecting a fight, then shrugged and walked off. Checkmate. I drifted toward the cabin's edge again, the lake lapping below. A memory hit. Greg promising me a fishing trip for my 15th birthday. I'd waited all day, rod in hand, only to find him at Lila's piano recital instead. Next time, he'd said. There was no next time. That was the day I started saving. Every penny, swearing I'd never rely on him again. Now, at 25, I didn't need his promises, or his approval. The party shifted gears, someone cranked the music, and Mason started a dumb dance-off with his buddies. Lila giggled, filming it on her phone. Greg clapped, beaming like a proud king. I watched, detached, my mind spinning. The blog post would rattle them, but I wanted more. I wanted them to feel what I'd felt. Small, dismissed, erased. Then, it clicked. The gift. I'd brought that vintage watch, wrapped in silver paper, still in my car. I'd planned to give it to Greg, a last-ditch shot at connection. Screw that. I'd sell it online tomorrow, $200 straight to my savings. But there was something else. A USB drive in my purse, loaded with old family photos I'd digitized. Happy shots of me and Greg, pre-Trish. I'd meant to surprise him with a slideshow. Now I had a better idea. I slipped back to my car, the gravel crunching under my boots. The watch stayed put, but I grabbed the USB and headed inside. The cabin had a big TV by the fireplace. Perfect. I'd plug it in, let those old pics play, and watch their faces twist. They'd see the kid they'd buried, and I'd see how deep their guilt ran or didn't. Either way, I'd know where I stood, once and for all. The cabin's warmth hit me as I stepped inside, USB drive burning a hole in my pocket. The party was at its peak. Laughter, clinking glasses, the stones blaring from the speakers. I weaved through the crowd, eyes locked on the TV by the fireplace. My heart pounded, but my steps were steady. Emma, the failure. Fine, they'd see what failure really meant when I shoved their past in their faces. I crouched by the TV, plugging in the USB. The screen flickered, then lit up with a photo. Me at 11, gap-toothed and grinning, holding a fish next to Greg. He was smiling too, arm around me, the creek sparkling behind us. I hit play, and the slideshow rolled. Next up, me and Greg building a snowman, then me on his shoulders at a fair. The room didn't notice at first, too busy with their beers and gossip. But I waited. Trish's voice cut through, sharp and annoyed. "What's this?" She'd spotted the screen, her salmon plate forgotten. Heads turned, murmurs rippling. Greg glanced over, mid-burger, and froze. The next photo hit, me at 12, alone on the porch staring at the camera while he coached Mason in the yard. I'd added captions, when he still saw me. Then, when he stopped. The room went quiet, all eyes on Greg. I stood, brushing off my jeans, and faced him. "Happy birthday, Greg," I said, loud enough to carry. "Thought you might like a trip down memory lane." His jaw tightened, but he didn't speak. Trish marched over, heels clicking. "Emma, what the hell? Turn this off." I crossed my arms. "Why? It's just family history." She glared, but I saw it, panic flickering in her eyes. The slideshow kept going. Me at 14, washing dishes while Lila danced in the background. Caption, "The help." Guests shifted awkwardly, some whispering. Mason snorted. "Real mature, Emma." Lila rolled her eyes, but her fiancé looked uncomfortable. Greg finally spoke, voice low. "Enough, cut it off." I tilted my head. "Not yet, you should see the best part." The next image was a scan of Mom's savings ledger, $15,000, circled in red with a note, "For Emma's future." Then a screenshot of my empty account at 17. Caption, "Gone for Lila's dreams." A gasp rippled through the crowd. Greg's face went pale, his burger dropping to the plate. Trish snapped, "That's a lie, you're twisting everything." I laughed, cold and sharp. "Am I? Ask him." All eyes swung to Greg. He cleared his throat, fumbling. "It's complicated. Emma, this isn't the time." I stepped closer, voice steady. "When is? When you ditched me for them? When you let her call me a failure?" I pointed at Trish, who flinched. "I worked my ass off while you bankrolled them, and this," I gestured at the name tag table, "is how you thank me?" The room was dead silent, the slideshow looping back to that first fishing pic. Greg rubbed his neck, avoiding my gaze. "You're blowing this out of proportion." Trish jumped in. "She's always been dramatic. It's just a joke." I smirked. "Funny, didn't see the failure on Mason's tag." She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I turned to the crowd, raising my voice. "I came here hoping he'd see me, just once, but I get it now. I'm not your kid." "Greg, I never was." His eyes flicked up, something like guilt flashing, but he said nothing. Trish hissed, "You're embarrassing yourself." I shrugged. No, I'm done. Enjoy your party. I yanked the USB out, the screen going black, and started for the... Greg called, Emma, wait! I didn't stop. The deck air hit me cool and crisp as I stormed to my car. My phone buzzed. Midnight. The blog post was live. I grinned, imagining their faces when it blew up. But I wasn't done yet. I had one last move, and it had hit harder than anything they'd seen tonight. I slid into my car, the engine rumbling. To life. The cabin glowed behind me, but I felt lighter than ever. They thought they'd won, labeling me the failure. They had no idea what was coming. I peeled out, gravel spitting under my tires, ready to burn this bridge for good. I sped down the winding Vermont road, the cabin shrinking in my rearview mirror. My heart raced, but not from fear. It was freedom, raw and electric. The slideshow, the confrontation, the blog post ticking like a time bomb, they'd shaken. Greg and Trish, but I wasn't done. My phone buzzed nonstop, texts from Lila, Mason, even Trish, probably venomous. I didn't check. I had one last card to play, and it'd rewrite everything they thought they knew. Back in Albany, I crashed. On my couch, the adrenaline still buzzing. My loft was small, exposed brick, a cluttered desk, plants I barely kept alive. But it was mine. No Trish sneering, no Greg ignoring me. I grabbed my laptop, the blog post already at 2,000 views. Comments flooded in. This stepdad's a jerk. Spill more. I smirked, but my focus shifted. The real finale wasn't online, it was personal. I'd been sitting on something for weeks, a secret I'd dug up by accident. Mom's old lawyer had died, but his son sent me a box of her files, wills, letters, random junk. Buried in it was a deed. Mom had owned a cabin, not this fancy Vermont rental, but a cozy shack in the Catskills. She'd left it to me, not Greg, in a trust he'd forgotten to mention. He'd been renting it out for years, pocketing the cash, $30,000 minimum. My college fund wasn't the only thing he'd stolen. I'd hired a PI last month, a gruff guy named Tony, to confirm it. He'd tracked the tenants, the payments, all leading to Greg's shady LLC. Tonight wasn't just about the name tag. It was the push I needed to act. I dialed Tony, my voice steady. File it tomorrow. He grunted, You sure this'll torch him? I laughed. Good. By morning, Greg would face a lawsuit, fraud, theft, the works. That cabin was mine, and I'd take every dime he'd squeezed from it. My phone lit up, Greg calling. I let it ring, imagining his panic. The blog was viral now, 10,000 views, and the slideshow pics I'd leaked were trending on X. Happy birthday, huh? I muttered, declining the call. A text. Popped up, Emma, come back, we'll talk. Too late. I blocked him, then Trish, Mason, Lila, one by one, done. 3 days later, I sat at my desk, coffee steaming, as Tony emailed the filing confirmation. The lawsuit was live. I pictured Greg opening that summons, Trish screeching, they're perfect, little world cracking. My phone stayed quiet, no more guilt trips, no more games. I leaned back, the weight gone. Freedom tasted like this. Bitter coffee, sunlight through my window, and silence. Then my laptop pinged. A new comment on the blog. Check your inbox. Weird. I opened my email and my breath stopped. It was from a woman, Sarah, claiming she was Mom's sister, my aunt. She'd found me through the post, said she'd cut ties with Greg years ago over his lies. Attached was a photo. Me as a baby, Mom beaming and Sarah beside her. A note. You're not a failure. Come visit Oregon. We've got a lot to catch up on. I stared, tears pricking my eyes. All this time I thought I was alone. Greg and Trish had erased my past, but it wasn't gone. It was waiting. I typed back, I'm in, see you soon. The lawsuit would bury them. The blog would expose them. But this was mine. I grabbed my keys, a laugh bubbling up. Failure? Nah, I was just getting started. That's the end of today's story. Did things turn out the way you thought, or were there some surprises along the way? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to hit the like button. And if you haven't joined the community yet, now's the perfect time. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you're always the first to catch new stories. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next adventure.